So our objective remains that we try to do some different things in familiar destinations, or we try to visit unfamiliar destinations, is what I would say. In kind of pursuit of adventure, we have kind of started doing trips. Pre-COVID, we started doing trips even in Europe. There were some walking trips that we started in Europe and cycling trips in Europe. And also, we started with some iconic journeys like Trans-Siberian Railway, which is currently closed because of the war between Ukraine and Russia. And we also promote cruises to Antarctica. So that's in a nutshell. So today's our guest speaker is going to be Mr. Chandrashekhar Nene. Chandrashekhar Nene, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
I have been fortunate of interacting with Mr. Nene on a couple of occasions earlier. Quickly, a background about Mr. Nene is he, in terms of academics, I just saw Mr. Nene today, your kind of profile. And I was surprised to see that you are a Bachelor of Science, you have done your Bachelor's in Electrical Engineering, you are a Bachelor of Law, uh, and he has worked at a senior position in a lot of corporates as a Chief Information Officer at VP level and above. And across the industry, I would say he has worked in pharma industry, he has worked in telecom industry, and most of the time, I think he's also worked in airline industry. So absolutely, and kind of wide industrial kind of exposure, various industries exposure is there. And yeah, can we go to the next slide in the meantime? Uh, and history has been his passion. Uh, so his kind of the kind of specialization that he does is on Maratha history. But of course, being an historian, he has wide knowledge about the history across the world. Uh, and he, like, we had interacted with him once. I remember we took his services to where we had taken him to Siagat, and he talked about for a very private group, and we talked about Maratha history sitting on Siagat. So it was a absolutely different experience for every one of us. And he also gives lectures in all over the India and internationally on history as well as on current political and economic affairs. So he has a lot of YouTube videos which are popular on current topic between Ukraine and Russia war. Absolutely a kind of wide knowledge and experience, I would say. Yeah. So once again, welcome, Mr.
Thank you.
Nene.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Milind.
and yeah, before I hand over the charge to you,
Yeah.
I would kind of request all the participants to kind of in short some house rules, let's say. So we will keep everyone on mute. And everyone can keep their videos also on mute if possible, so that the bandwidth is much more, the voice is clear, the slides are very clear for everyone. And if any question comes to your mind then and there, and if you want to kind of post it, you put it on the chat box. After the session is over, we are definitely going to open the forum for everyone to interact with Mr. Nene directly. They can ask any questions if they want directly. The only thing is we'll keep mute to avoid all the background noise and things like that. But you raise your hand, and Kiran would open up and you can kind of ask your question to Mr. Nene. I hope that is okay with everyone.
पहले ये किया था
Uh,
तुमने
uh,
रजिस्टर किया था
Kiran, can you just mute everyone, please?
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of otherwise it will disturb everybody else. Yeah, and probably switch off the video also for a better bandwidth. Yeah. Uh, Once you do that, we'll get into the session. Yeah. Kiran, just confirm once you do it.
Done.
Done. Okay. Mr. Nene, though I will kind of hand over everything to you right away, but the question that comes to everybody's mind is typically, I would pose in a very Dr. Prabhu Avaja, you need to kind of mute your audio and video because it will disturbing everybody else. Dr. Avaja?
I did it. Don't worry.
Okay. And then a phone call sang paye.
Yeah.
So coming back, Mr. Nene, the question is key in terms of travel.
Yes.
Obviously, why Egypt? Okay.
Sure.
And obviously, we are kind of trying to interact with you to get a more perspective on the Egypt, so that our experience of traveling to Egypt will be more enriched in a way. So when we are looking at monuments and when we are looking at various facts which are probably dated 5,000 years back in history, we have some perspective to look at them.
Sure.
And as rightly told by one of the gentlemen earlier, is when you know about a certain things and when you look at it, the entire perspective in which you look changes.
Right.
So it will definitely enhance. But what comes to my mind is definitely why Egypt?
Yeah.
It's the most popular destination, but still, I would like to kind of first ask you a question saying that why Egypt?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let me start first by thanking countryside adventure holidays and Mr. Milind Bhede in particular for giving me this opportunity. For me, it is reliving my own Egypt trip. I had done 3 trips to Egypt, and each of those trips have been memorable. They evoke a lot of great memories, and they also make me very happy to share these memories and a little bit more knowledge which I have gained across number of years with you. A very valid question Milind asked, why Egypt? Whenever you take a trip to say Dubai, when you take a trip to USA and all, this question never crops up because everybody knows USA is one of the most advanced countries. Dubai is the shopping destination, blah, blah, blah. About Egypt, the common perception is it's a poor country, overpopulated, poor country, a Muslim country. I mean, that's the perception. And somewhere in a corner of Africa, it's actually in the northeastern corner of Africa, really speaking. Why to go there? The reason is what you see Egypt now is not what Egypt was. Egypt was the most advanced civilization over 4,000 years ago. Actually, the history of Egypt, the recorded history, authentic history of Egypt, goes back to at least 6,000 years. Why I say recorded and authentic? Each of the countries, each of the culture have their own legends. What we call in Marathi dantakatha और कहानियां किस्से कहानियां होती है जो पुरखों से चली आ रही होती है. But there may not be any proof per se in geology or in history or a document, any of those things. Unlike those, the Egyptian civilization has left copious proofs in written documents, in monuments, in huge architectures, and in really magnanimous cultural proportions. Again, I will repeat that this was the Egypt of 4,000 or 6,000 years ago. Why I say 4,000? 4,000 years ago, Egyptians' earliest hieroglyph, that means their characters, their own script, have been recorded. So that is the 4,000 years. But before that, also see a society develops a script. For that, the society must have come to this level by going through a lot of cultural involvement and enhancement. So the actual history goes back 6,000 or maybe more number of years, but 4,000 years of recorded history is there. Now, Egypt is a country which is rightly, and why we should go there? It is the celebration of human achievement. When the humans were hanging like apes in the trees, walking like apes in the trees, and they came to what we see the modern human being, Homo sapiens. During this journey, what all great feats were achieved by this once ape. Some people like to call us naked ape because we don't have the hair like the gorilla and chimpanzee. But where we have reached it, and what all achievements we made when today's technical abilities were not there. Remember when the Egyptians built pyramid, which is the tallest structure, which was the tallest structure for a large number of centuries, they didn't even have wheels. It's the truth. Egyptians didn't use wheels, and they still managed to make these pyramids. We don't know what kind of mathematics they had. We don't know what kind of science they had. Still, they managed to create something which, incidentally, some scientists got together and a question was asked on Google, can we make a pyramid now? Given all the technical capabilities, cranes are there, power is there, powered vehicles are there, electricity is there. They said emphatically, no, we cannot make a structure like pyramid even now. And these guys made it like 4,500 years ago. That is the celebration of human achievement. And I would like each of us to look at today's Egypt with a goggles or with a spectacle of yesterday's Egypt and to celebrate this achievement of human race. And that is what Egypt is. And that's why we should go to Egypt. Egypt is a very interesting country, by the way. Yeah,
Uh,
you were asking something.
yeah, fantastic the way you kind of narrated, and I was not aware that the wheel was not
Yeah,
there during those era. But
yeah,
at the same time, that brings me to the thought saying that when you talk about Egypt, you can't miss out on the Nile.
yes,
Yeah, and the Nile.
Who's making the coffee?
My
We
little
can talk.
1 second.
तुझे बाबा के लिए लाऊंगी वो.
1 second. 1 second. Hello.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
sorry
okay.
for
No
the
problem.
interruption. Yeah, so what I was saying that we can't kind of give up on Nile. Like
Yes,
Nile is the
right.
major kind of lifeline for everything out there.
Very correct.
And obviously, in our like geography books during our childhood, we have kind of read about Nile and Egyptian civilization, also the civilization along the Nile,
Right,
and that is the only river which goes from south to north,
right.
unlike most of the major rivers which flow from north to south.
Very
Yeah,
correct.
and as I came to know more of a confirmation from your side that it is the longest river in the world.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is not probably the largest in terms of the volume, but it's the longest river in the world.
Yeah,
So a quick, Lee, if you can kind of let us know about Nile River, because we are going to cruise on Nile River for 3 days.
yeah.
Uh,
Correct.
and
Absolutely.
I'm sure the river must have influenced the civilization,
Yes.
the economics of that place, and even the history
Yeah.
out there. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Definitely. Egypt is actually called the gift of the Nile. The civilization is a gift of the Nile because very interestingly, if you when you will travel to Egypt by air, you will observe a, a wide from the air it doesn't look even very wide. A stream of water, which is the Nile River, alongside about 2 miles on either side, you will see green patches because there is farmland and things like that, and both sides apart from these 2 miles patches, it is all just barren desert. So that country has bloomed into the desert thanks to this thing called Nile. Nile, as Milin very correctly said, the longest river. And for a very long time, Egyptian didn't even know where this river comes from because the source of the Nile is hidden away deep inside Central Africa. I'll come to that. So let us take this journey now. This journey is along the Nile, but also along the time. As if we are entering a time machine and seeing how this civilization developed and where we are now. So let us move into that. It's touring Egyptian history. That is the presentation called. And tour along the mighty Nile River, 6,650 kilometers long. This map is the tourist high spots of Egypt. They are all, as you can say, it starts from Abu Simbel in the southmost to Alexandria to the northmost, and along with all the green thing, which is the river Nile. Now, Nile is, as I said, Nile gave them the water. Water is precious. All the older civilizations have always been on the side of some rivers. We know the Indus Valley civilization. It is called because it was on the banks of Indus River. In China, the civilization was on the banks of Yangtze River and the Yellow River. Everywhere, because you need water. If you don't have electricity, if you don't have transport, you cannot get water other than going by the side of a river. But the beauty of Nile was so wide and so placid and calm on normal times. It was not only the water giver, it was also a transport. So this was also a highway, at the same time, a great pipeline for the entire country. How does Nile look actually? This is the map of Nile from the source up to the destination. As you can see, Nile is formed by two rivers. One river is called Blue Nile, which actually originates in Lake Victoria in Uganda. It actually on the banks of the Entebbe airport, the famous airport where the hostage rescue was done by Mossad during the Israeli citizens laid hostage. From there, it starts and it moves up north. As rightly said, it's one of the very few rivers which are going into the northwardly direction. Most of the rivers actually go from north to south. All the Indian rivers, as you know, they originate in Himalaya and come down south, not here. Because Nile doesn't originate out of a mountain. Nile originates out of a lake. Lake Victoria is almost like an inland sea. It is very big. It takes 8 days to cross Lake Victoria by boat. It's not a lake, it's a sea, sweetwater lake. It originates out of Lake Victoria. And then when it reaches to Khartoum, which is a capital of Sudan, next to Khartoum, it is joined by a thing called White Nile, another river of equal proportions from White Nile, and that comes out of a lake Tana in Ethiopia. Today's Ethiopia, earlier Abyssinia. Now, this White Nile and the Blue Nile together, then they form the very big water flow, which is called the Nile in general, which is our Nile. The name of the Nile, it comes from various documents. It comes as Nilux, or Nilux was its name in Greek documents. But one of the sources given to the name of the Nile is Nila from Sanskrit. Because in India was very famous for providing blue color because we had that indigo plant. So the blue color was known across the world as the indica color. And its name for blue in India was Nile. Since Nile looked blue in color, some of the people gave it the name Nila Nadi, Nile River, then it became Nile. That is one of the possible origins to the name of the Nile. So it starts from Khartoum, then it goes all along. It reaches, there is a place called Aswan. Aswan is a place in Egypt, is the southern border of today's Egypt. And south of Aswan is Sudan. So this country is Sudan, all over Khartoum nearby. And here somewhere is Aswan. Here it is shown that there are obstacles into the river. They are called cataracts. Cataract is a geological word here. It is actually rough, rocky outcropping on the river, which makes the river very choppy. Waterfalls of 6 or 7 feet of height, not much height, but very choppy. So it is not navigable. So Aswan is the place where the cataracts finish. There are 6 cataracts from Aswan uh, down towards the south. They finish at Aswan and then it becomes the placid flow of Nile. It is completely navigable from Aswan up to Alexandria. It's a long distance, about more than 1,000 kilometers. All this is completely navigable. So as I said, Nile was a water giver. It was a transport, but it did something else. As I said, it originates in equatorial area. The Lake Victoria is actually south of equator. It originates at Lake Victoria. There is heavy waterfall. Equator belt is a heavy waterfall belt. So it has copious supply of water. And it floods every year at a very regular time when there is a rainy season in these areas. It floods and the floods actually flow across the river and it brings lots and lots of silt as a black soil. The black soil comes out and it spreads along both the banks of the river. This is what the Nile flooding is. Nile flooding worked like a clockwork, like exactly like a clock. On a particular day, the flood will start. On a particular day, the flood will recede and life will be as before. But what it brought was the black soil. Black soil was the most fertile soil which came there. It was fertile for grain. It was fertile most importantly for cotton. Cotton was actually discovered in Egypt. The word kutun is the word in Arabic which was picked up by the European languages to call it cotton. Europeans didn't know cotton. All the clothes they made were out of fibers, out of sisal, another plant fiber. They didn't know cotton. Wool and sisal is what they made use. So cotton was one of the most major export of Egypt. So the people in Egypt, they realized that like a God gift, this flood comes every year. The moment flood comes, you have to leave everything. You have to wait for the flood to recede, then plant your seeds, then the crops grow. You cut the crops, and there the flood is back again. So it is like in the Jewish scriptures, it's called manna from heaven, which means from heaven it is honey is pouring down on you. So it is like a God gift. Now I told you it was not navigable southwards, so they didn't know where it was coming from. So they were quite sure that this is a gift of the gods. Gods only send it regularly. Sometimes when the floods don't come, you must have done something wrong. So they start doing a lot of sacrifice and vrata and all these things. So Egypt, the ancient Egypt became a very, very religious nation. They were, and their main god was sun. Sun they used to call Ra, because they knew that sun is creating everything. Life is being created by sun, and then the river is bringing in all the goodies. So there was a river god called Sobek. The image of river god Sobek was in form of a crocodile. We have Narsimha avatar, so they have lots of Narsimha among their gods. I'll come to them. So Sobek was the god which gave them vegetables, flowers, and fruits, and fertility, and everything. Likewise, many gods were there, and they were having a perfectly regular life. Lot of floods were automatic, so they didn't have to put any fertilizers. They didn't have to till the soil. Remember, there was no tilling of the soil needed, because soil was being tilled every time when the floods are coming. And this way, it became very rich, because at the time there are only two or three things which make your nation rich. One is the grain it makes. Second is any kind of agricultural export product, cotton. They had cotton. Third was gold. Incidentally, Sudan and down south in Zimbabwe, there were a lot of gold mines. So they managed to get gold also from there. So gold was, it was not coming over the Nile, of course, it was coming over camels and all. But the gold also came into Egypt, and Egypt was ruled by the gods themselves, according to them. But since God can't come himself or herself for that matter, they have to appoint a manager, and that manager was called Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the superman, or the main. So Pharaoh were the Egyptian kings.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to interrupt,
Please,
Nene sir, because I need to monitor, because we need to
yeah,
cover a
you
lot of
please do that.
subjects,
I am very
and
happy with that.
we kind of need to cover almost history of 5,000 years plus.
Yes,
So it's not
that's a
going to be
challenge
easy,
actually.
and that to be in 1 hour.
Yes,
So we have
yes,
to probably jump in
yeah, I am doing that.
centuries and
I'm doing
not.
that. Yes.
But
So
anyway, fantastic. It actually tells us ki how, because of Nile, there was a civilization that kind of came,
correct.
and because of the fertility and the transportation that was possible, the economic and trade that happened, and probably it connected them right up to Alexandria, which connects to the Mediterranean Sea.
Correct.
Absolutely. And how did it influence the politics or history? Did it influence the politics and history along with it?
Yeah.
Is what I would like to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This Pharaoh, once he made sure that people understood I am the God's representative. Sometimes I am myself the God incarnation. People were very obedient. In Egypt, there were only two strata of the society. One was the Pharaoh and the priests of the Pharaoh, because somebody has to do all the religious rites. And second was the general public. The general public had no right. All land belonged to the Pharaoh. So general public had to simply work hard, pay taxes, do as the Pharaoh wants. And Pharaoh was a closely guarded small group. They in fact even married amongst themselves, just as to not to act in their own language, not to spoil uh, the race, so to speak. So the brother-sister marriage was very common in the Pharaoh, basically not to share their wealth across. And they became very wealthy. So the politics was servants and the boss. There was no third layer. And the boss was being advised by a group of ministers and the priests. Priests were very important, because when this Pharaoh culture was there, they were so happy enjoying life. They wanted to enjoy life even after they are dead. They consider death as a temporary stop, and after that they will use the same body in the next world. They used to call the nether world or something, and gods will grant them the same riches again, but you have to keep the body intact. So they developed a method to keep the body intact. The method we call the mummies. And to keep the bodies intact and to keep it safe somewhere, they built huge structures. The structure we call pyramid. This is the this is the famous pyramid of Khafre at Giza, Giza, which is now a suburb of Cairo. It was away from Cairo at that time. One important thing, because sun was their god, Ra, as they call it. Sun is rising from the east, but then it goes to the west and sinks in the west. So they consider Ra dies in the west, is reborn in the east. That means west is the direction of the death, east is the direction of life. So all the civilization of Egyptians was on the eastern side of the Nile. All the cemeteries of Egyptians were on the western side of the Nile. So this pyramid, of course, is one of the largest cemeteries, so to speak. It is on the western uh, side of west coast of Nile. Now I will jump to the way you are going to conduct your tour. I decided to take the same route. Pyramid I showed just at the end. We'll come again to this pyramid. You cannot escape.
But Nene sir, I think
Yeah,
it is important to read out the thing that has been
yeah,
written
yeah,
about the
yeah.
pyramid
I'm going to
picture.
tell that. A very interesting saying is there in Egypt, and the saying is from ages along. Everyone is afraid of time, but time is afraid of the pyramids because this is the oldest structure made by man still standing together. There are seven man-made wonders of the world. This is the only one surviving. All the other wonders are no more there. There was a Colossus of Rhodes in Greece. Uh, um, there was a tomb at Artemis in Turkey. Everything is gone. Nothing is existing. This piece is there since 4,000 years and more, and it looks like this is going to stand for another 10 or 20,000 years because it has even survived four major earthquakes in Egypt. Such a massively built structure. So we'll move from the pyramids.
Yeah,
I mean,
we will
pyramids.
again come back.
We'll come back to the pyramids. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
A very quick progress of the empire of Egypt. As I said, BC is before the Christian era.
Dinesh साहब एक मिनट एक
Yeah, I
मिनट
am holding.
can I request everyone to please go on mute because it
I will
creates a
answer all the
disturbance to
questions
others.
as we go further.
Yeah, Nene, I think but I think they forgot to unmute. Like keep on mute themselves. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Wherever I write BC, BC is before the Christian era, means you have to add 2000 years to 2022 years now to the numbers there. So 3100 BC, which means 5122 years before the first earliest hieroglyph. Hieroglyph is the writing of Egyptian was discovered, was made actually. It was discovered later, but it was made at that time. Then there were three major kingdoms. One is the Old Kingdom, in which the Great Sphinx and Great Pyramid were made, 2600 BC, lot of time before. And then the Middle Kingdom, which is the golden age of Egyptian literature. And finally, the New Kingdom, which is the wealthiest era of Egyptian history. In the New Kingdom itself, about 1334 years before the Christ, again adding 2000 years, this comes to 3000 and more. King Tutankhamun was there. His tomb was the tomb which was the completely intact tomb discovered just 100 years back on 26th November 1922. It was discovered, and that he was there. Then even after that, Ramses II was called the mightiest pharaoh. Pharaoh means the leader, as I said, mightiest pharaoh of Egypt. He reigned across Egypt from Abu Simbel all the way up to Alexandria. That was his reign. And in 332 BC, after coming from India, after conquering Porus and getting defeated by Chandragupta, our friend Alexander the Great returned back. He came to Alexandria in Egypt. He established the city himself, and he wanted to become the pharaoh in Egypt. He fell in love with the Egyptian civilization. So many achievements, so many good things. Egyptians wouldn't accept him as because he was a foreigner. So he went to the then capital of Egypt called Memphis, and he anointed himself as a pharaoh. He did a ceremony there. So he called himself a pharaoh. He unfortunately died in Alexandria, but his heirs, not his heirs, his actually general was named Ptolemy. The Ptolemy then continued the Greek pharaoh line, and the last of the Greek pharaoh line is the famous Cleopatra. And in 196 before Christ, a piece was called Rosetta Stone was inscribed. I'll come to Rosetta Stone quickly. 30 years before Christ, Cleopatra committed suicide. So the Greek pharaoh business in Egypt ended. And in 394 AD. 390 AD means today's years. So in the year 394, the last of the hieroglyph was written. Afterwards, hieroglyph vanished from everybody's memory. Nobody knew what they meant. Nobody knew what they said. It was all Greek language for some time. Then the Arabs conquered Egypt. Then everything else went, and Arabs will brought in Quran and Persian Arabic, basically Arabic writing there. 1798 is when Napoleon invaded Egypt. That was the first European uh, inroad into the Egypt. But he also brought him with him a lot of scientists and engineers and mathematicians and so on. That they actually in 1799 discovered the Rosetta Stone, and in 1821, just after 22 years, the Rosetta Stone was decoded by a great linguist in France called Champollion. This is the Rosetta Stone. It's a stone tablet, it's a piece of stone which is inscribed in three different scripts. This is the Egyptian hieroglyph script. This is the script of Demotic, which the common people use. This is the language of the priest. This is the language of the common people of Egypt. And this is ancient Greek. Fortunately, by the time Rosetta Stone was discovered, the name Rosetta comes from the place where this stone was discovered. It is in very close to Alexandria called Port Rashid. French people, in their own sense, named it Rosetta. Rosetta means a small rose. That is where they found this stone among the rubble of a building. So they took this stone. Somebody realized the importance, so they brought it, they studied it, and they realized these three things are saying the same thing. This is basically, if you go to any monument in India, you will see boards in English, boards in Hindi. They actually say the same thing about the monument. Now, this is not a monument. This is a king's degree. It is a priest's degree. What everybody should do, what should we do, do's and don'ts kind of thing. But it is the same. So it aided into decoding the script and the language of the Egyptians, the hieroglyphs. Till then, hieroglyphs are in Egypt across the entire country. It is often said that a new language is like a closed book. You don't know what it says. In Egypt, the new language was like an open book. There were thousands and thousands of inscriptions all over Europe, all over Egypt. Some of them were set in stone, some of them were written in a papyrus. That's a gift of Egypt to the humanity, by the way. Papyrus is a kind of paper made from a reed. I'll come to that later. The reed's name is papyrus reed. That's why comes the word paper. So there is ample characters there, but nobody knew how to read. For 2000 and 3000 years, nobody knew how to read this. The great Pharaoh Champollion decoded it, and then Egypt was open. And then they realized, oh, this country has so many gods. Ancient Egypt, I mean. There is a goddess called Isis, then there is a goddess called Sekhat, then Sobek. I told you about the guy with the crocodile face. This is Sekhat. This is Sekhat. Then there is Osiris, he is the god of the god of the netherworld. He is the Chitragupta of Egyptians. When a person dies, when he will do the Nyaya Nivada, the justice for that person, and then person will go to heaven or hell. That is his job. So many are gods. His son is Horus. Horus was with was a god of sky, so he was keeping a hawk-like face. His wife was Hathor. Hathor has given cow-like face because she was a giver of plenty, but she was also the daughter of sun. So there is a sun on the head of that lady. There is Seth, who is the god of underworld, so on and so forth. Lots and lots of gods. But the most important god they had was this called Ptah. Ptah, the pronunciation is Pataha. Actually, if you remember Pitaha, that is the same. Pita means he was the Pita of all the gods. He was there before everything was there. He created the remaining gods to manage it. So he is the CEO. He appointed a board of directors who manage the world. That is the in short. So Pita doesn't have any origin. He is originless. So that is the most important god there. Now, this Pita is celebrated across the Egypt with lot of temples. Now we'll start at Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is the border post, is the southernmost post of the Pharaoh's power. At Abu Simbel, the Pharaohs were ruling, and to tell everybody else beyond Abu Simbel southwards, because it was a non-navigable Nile, as I told you, that this is where I am. I am controlling the trade on the Nile. You have to pay your octroi and customs duty to me. If you don't do that, I am my eyes on you. That's why you see this Ramses II, the great Ramesses. His face will be across Egypt everywhere. He was very fond of his own face.
चेकिंग कर दी अच्छा तो आए बैक टू लाइन
He was very fond of his own face, looks like, and he had wives also. But since wives were having a lesser stature, the wife statues were, of course, of much lesser height, not in real height, but a lesser height. I'll come to that wife also later. So this guy, and here is the the sun god Ra. On the top, you see this sun god Ra is also there, and he is looking over to the east into the Nile. He's looking at sun, and this is the famous temple of Abu Simbel. You are going to see that. This temple was on the banks of Nile, but later on, Egyptian authorities decided that they want a big dam, and they dammed the Nile. They dammed the Nile twice. One in 1802, they called at Aswan, the place. They called it a lower Aswan Dam. Then they built a much bigger one later on in 1960s. They called it a bigger Aswan Dam. Bigger Aswan Dam has even today the largest backwaters in the world. The backwaters reach up to 600 miles, 600 kilometers down south, and they would have submerged this temple completely. So Egyptian government asked the UNESCO to help them out. This is a heritage temple. So UNESCO and 14 other countries came together. Egypt didn't have any money either. They didn't have money. They were poor from, they became poor once the Pharaoh business was gone, by the way. They were looted by everybody else and they're left without any money. So they begged to UNESCO, they got money for the Aswan Dam, and they got also somebody to do this shifting of this temple. So it's not a small temple. I will show you the size of this statue. This is, by the way, the name of the king Ramses in his own hieroglyphic language. If you see this, there is a circle around it, there's an oval around it. The oval is called cartouche. Cartouche in French, it's what's called the cartridge of a rifle, of a bullet. So this looks like a cartridge to them, so they call it cartouche. Anything which is enclosed in a cartouche is actually the name of one pharaoh. There were at least 1,000 pharaohs in this all long history. So this is the name Ramesses. Because it is a name, they could actually decode the letters using this name. One is R, one is M, one is S, God knows all those. So this is the Ramses, the chief was there. This is the time of Ramses, 1279 BC to 1213 BC, long time ago. And he actually reigned for 66 years. He lived up to 90 years. Very rare in those days. Rare in today's also. But those days, of course, living up to 90 years is quite something, a feat, in fact. This is how he looks now. I wanted to put this as a reminder. This is now he looks now. We know it because he's kept like this in Cairo. When you go to Cairo Museum, there is a special room in which all these actual mummies are there. So this is the mummy of the great man Ramesses. If you see, you can see his teeth. There is one teeth protruding somewhere. So at 90 also, he had at least one tooth left somewhere. His hair is not a colored photograph. His hair was actually colored by Mendi. So putting Mendi on the hair is a very age-old tradition. Interestingly, look at how his hands are there. The hands are like this because this was the position of the king when he was sitting on the throne. In his hands, he had one item called the shepherd's hook, by which he controlled the all the rulers, all the ruled people, and in another hand he had called what is flail. Flail is actually a small instrument by which you actually clear the grain. So that was a sign of plenty. But this is not a natural position of the hands. Now, when this fellow died, he didn't die like this. He died like this, probably like everybody else. So priests, when putting him in mummy form, they broke his hands both and put them like this. This is how they created the mummies. There are gory details of how the mummies are created. If time permits, we'll talk about it or we'll talk it in Q&A.
Nene sir, I think we probably 1 hour is too
No,
less.
I'm moving now. I'm moving.
So
I know.
we probably need to cover a bit, and of course,
I'm going fast now.
we can cover a lot of things in Q&A if they wish
Yes.
to. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now this is inside the temple of Abu Simbel. There is an interesting thing. That's why I put it here. 2 days in the year, 22nd October and 22nd February, in the early morning, sun rays come directly inside, and these three are illuminated. This is the Pharaoh Ramses. This is the god. This is sun god Ra. This guy is the Ptah. PTAH I told you about, because he was there before forming of the sun. He is not illuminated. He doesn't need sun. He can see in the dark. This is how the Abu Simbel was relocated. Look at the size of that Abu Simbel's Ramses head, and look at the size of the humans. They cut it all along, moved it to a new place which was on a hill somewhere where water will not reach it, and refitted it like jigsaw puzzle. The joints can still not be seen. It is so meticulously done. This is how they did that, using cranes and all. Consider about how they built this when cranes were not there.
Is there a documentary on this?
Yeah, there is
by
one.
the-
I'll send you a link later on.
Yeah, if
There
you
is a
can
documentary
find a
on this.
link, it would be interesting
Yeah,
because it's such a huge monument, and to kind of transfer it
This
from
was
one
a
place to
great
another place.
project. As I told you,
Yeah.
14 countries took part of it, and as a gift, each of the 14 countries received some antique piece from Egypt. That's the next.
Okay.
What else they could
Okay.
give? They had nothing
Yeah.
to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you
Yeah.
move to Aswan. Aswan had a temple called Philae. You'll be seeing this temple. It's a very big temple. Philae was in honor of the Horus, this fellow, and his mother Isis. Philae was the temple of great proportion, but it was built much later. There was a very earlier temple of Horus earlier there. Later on, it was built by Ptolemy and his gang to make this temple. This also was sinking, so they moved this temple also. This is there is an island called Agilica. It is at Agilica Island in Aswan itself. Horus temple, there is a thing called, there is a place called Edfu. Now we are moving on the cruise, huh? We are going very fast now. So Edfu
Yeah.
is where this Horus, the god with the head of the hawk, this is the piece of the hawk. It's almost some 10 feet tall, and look at how carefully they have carved it. There are two such hawks. Like Nandi in a Mahadev temple, there are these hawks sitting there. So this is the Edfu temple. This is built by Ptolemy. Komombo, the guy with the crocodile head. Komombo is your next stop. That is where the Komombo temple is there. There is something interesting to see in the Komombo temple apart from this, and it is called a Nilometer. I told you that Pharaoh taxed these people. How did he tax? Based on what? He taxed in based on what was the Nile floods giving and how much money you made by grain. To calculate that, there is a thing called Nilometer. This is a Nilometer about 3,000 years old or 4,000 years old. What it does, it collects the Nile water as it moves. Inside it looks like this. On this central pillar, there are markings. So there is a guy who records it all the time. There are 3,000 years of records of Nile floods. Every year, when the flood came, how much it came. 3,000 years old record, all in papyrus paper. On it, all this papyrus could stay very well in shape because of the desert. Remember, Egypt doesn't have any rains. No rains in Egypt. That means no clouds in Egypt. That means a clear sky all the year round. That means you can see the stars. So Egyptians were very good at astronomy. We'll come to that further. So this is the Nilometer. And another interesting thing, look at the year, it is 180 BC. This is a medical kit. This is on a big wall inside the Komomo temple. At the back of the temple, there is a big wall in which they have given all the medical tools 180 years before Christ. That means 2,200 years ago. These are the tools they were using in Egypt. All the scalpel, knives, and God knows, everything is there. You must see this. The doctors in your team must see this to appreciate what it was. Look at the civilization celebration. Remember, I told you about celebration of a civilization? This is what it is. Next, move to Luxor. Luxor is a place it was used to call Thebes. It was the capital of the ancient Egypt. Very big place, very big temple. There are two very big temples. One temple is called Luxor temple itself. Another is Karnak temple itself. Fantastic pillars. These pillars are over 80 to 90 feet tall with all kind of carvings there. You see, in if you go to any monument, you will see a lot of people writing their own names. X loves Y or Y doesn't love X or whatever, that kind of thing. Even in those times, that is called graffiti. In Karnak and in Luxor, there is graffiti, but the graffiti is at least 2,000 years old. Interesting. So human nature doesn't change. 2,000 years
So,
graffiti is also preserved. So if there was a XY, X loves Y, X loves Y is known to people 2,000 years also, later also. That is something like that. Except it's in hieroglyphs, so you wouldn't read it. This is another temple there. This is the temple of Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut, for the ladies in this program, she is the first women's slip champion. I'll come to that. She is our lady. In 1479 BC, this was Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was her name. She was a daughter of a pharaoh, wife of another pharaoh, but her own son, who would have become the pharaoh, was very young. So she assumed the leadership. She sat on the throne. People said, "Hey, you are not a man. You cannot be boss." So she put this piece. She put a beard on her. She put a beard, and she said, "Now I am a man. I am going to lead." Her reign was the best in Egypt. She created a lot of construction, lot of projects, and really a very good queen, if you will, but king, queen, or the pharaoh, the god's representative. She built that Hatshepsut. She built many other things. This is her cartouche. Remember, I said this is her seal, Hatshepsut seal. So she is actually the first women slip person. Look, 1479 plus 2, that is 3,500 years ago, she was the women's slipper. In Luxor, they installed something like the obelisk. Obelisk is, they loved obelisk. All the pharaohs wanted to create this piece. This is a square piece. At the top, there is a small pyramid, and all written with the, what will be written here? This pharaoh was great. He was he pursued this god. This god blessed him with A, B, C, D, blah, blah. All the goodies about the pharaoh. It never recorded in that. Obelisks were there across Egypt. This is the one at Luxor, a very tall one. Then there comes the Valley of the King. Remember, I told you pyramids were actually where they put all the dead bodies. They wrapped the dead bodies in. What they did actually, when the person was died, they removed all the internal organs because they will spoil. They want the body to be intact, means only the cover of the body to be intact. So they removed all the internal organs. They removed the brain also, but I won't talk about that. And then they wrapped it in cloth. Egypt, very good cloth, and the cloth was covered with tar. They had tar from somewhere. They put it in tar. Tar was called mummy in that mumia in their language. So that's why mummy. Mummy means nothing sealed in tar. So it is intact from weather. Rains were not there. Water problem was not there. So it will stay forever. It does stay forever. Ramses is still waiting for you at the Cairo Museum when you go there after all these number of years. So, so this is the mummy. And because it was all in tar, and don't forget, everybody, every living being in Egypt wanted to make a mummy of his or her own. They already had their own moms, but they wanted to create a mummy of their own. So there is a big business of creating mummies. Boards will be there. Here you will get the cheapest mummy. Here you will get the longer lasting mummy. This mummy is guaranteed for 1,000 years. Come to us. If it is not there, we replace it for you. That kind of boards were there. But that means everybody created mummies. Not only that, everybody created mummies as sacrifice. They have discovered animals also, sacrificial animal. They have discovered recently 4 million, 40 lakh cats mummified in one place. Because they will say, Ki, Acha, you are getting favor, just donate one mummy, one cat mummy, you will be okay. So they will go to the market, cat mummy kitne ka milta hai, bana ke dal do. Those were the kind of mummification going on. It was a big business. There's a bird called ibis in Egypt with a black beak, and it's like a bagula-like bird. There are at least 50 lakh ibises mummified. There are 50 lakh cats, there are 40 lakh cats, and all kind of things. So that's a business for you. But pyramids where they buried, but they're buried with lot of gold, lot of silver, lot of everything. It is like packing for going for this trip you are going. You pack for everything. Now this guy is going to the netherworld. He will need his Mount Bank pen. He will need his mobile phone. He will need his charger, ABCD. So all of these were packed, not the mobile and Mount Bank. All of the necessities were packed along with lot of gold. Egypt was a particular country when it didn't have any coins. This is interesting. I recently learned Egypt had no coins. It was a barter country. So the best barter is gold. So a lot of gold is given to him. No credit cards then, no credit cards in future. They wouldn't know that. So gold was kept in the mummies. And who will see this? All the robbers saw this. So they wanted to rob. And creating a pyramid which is acting even now in such a tall 465, 485 feet tall is like advertising. All my money is there. Go and rob it. And robbers promptly went and robbed and cleaned the pyramids. So then they realized, yeah, we are doing something wrong. So they created this Valley of Kings. They hid all the mummies inside. They covered it with dust and rocks and all. Nobody knew where it was. But robbers have ways. The people who built this had ways. They told somebody, somebody's friend, somebody. So they robbed all of this except for one, and that is Tutankhamun's tomb.
Wow.
Mummies were wrapped in those uh, cloth and tar and all, and then they were put in, and then they were put in sarcophagus. Sarcophagus means a coffin. There were three coffins, one among another. This is the gold coffin. 220 pounds of gold went into put. And Tutankhamun, remember, he was a boy king. He was 17 years when he died. Now, whenever a pharaoh will come to rule, he will start somebody as a project. कि भाई मेरे लिए एक pyramid बना रखना और मेरे लिए एक grave बनाया. उसके लिए budget was allocated, money was given. This guy died very early. If he had died like his ancestors at 60, 70, they had at least that much time to create a huge burial chamber. इसके पास तो time नहीं था, जल्दी मर गया. Because of that, he has got only this 220 pounds. Nothing much, 220 pounds and a few, probably a few thousand kilograms of gold and ornaments and blah, 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 everything. Even bread was there, honey was there. The honey was eatable even now by Diva. That's very interesting. Honey is still eatable after 3,000 years of remaining in the grave of Tutankhamun. That's honey for you. It's really a very stable kind of thing. But all of this was kept sealed. Fortunately for the humanity, this seal was not known. This place was not known. So a British archaeologist called Howard Carter, his patron was Lord Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon's place in England is the Downton Abbey, by the way, the serial which you all see. Anyway, so Lord Carnarvon gave the money. Howard Carter worked for 7 years. What?
Nene sir, 1 second.
Yeah.
Again, a request for everyone to go on mute. There's a disturbance
Yeah,
otherwise.
yeah.
So please go on mute, all of you. Kiran, if you can manage to keep everyone on mute, it will be nice.
I did.
Yeah. Now this one, for example, I'm not mute now. Yeah. This
No.
one is actually the gold sarcophagus, 220 pounds. It is not there in that Valley of King because it would have been stolen immediately. It is taken to Cairo Museum. You will see it in the Cairo Museum. This is the actual photograph put in with color of the actual finding of our Tutankhamun's tomb. The tomb was opened exactly 100 years before I told you in 1922, 26 November 1922. This was found. 4th December 1922, it was opened up. It was broken into, opened up. This is what he found. Our friend Howard Carter, our friend Tutankhamun, quietly lying there. All this time he's still lying there. They have put the body into the Valley of King, but they have taken all the valuables up into Cairo. That's usually what the rulers do. Then we go to Memphis. Memphis, as I said, was a major city. That's where Alexander anointed himself. That was the capital of Egypt when Alexander took over Egypt. This was found in Memphis. This is the same good friend, Ramesses II, the mightiest pharaoh. Ramesses, by the way, means Ra means God. Ramesses is son of that sun god. This is Ramesses. It's such a huge statue. It was supposed to stand on his 2 feet, but as you see, the feet were broken. So that's why he's lying face up. And to see this, they have created this balcony. You can't see it otherwise. You have to see it from a balcony, move around, and very finely carved, huge statue. Now we come to the Great Pyramids. This is Sphinx. This is Giza. This is Khafre. There are 3 major pyramids. There are 18 smaller pyramids nearby. I'm just going to spend a little time on this, not much because we don't have much time. Sphinx is supposed to be older than the pyramids. Sphinx, according to some meteorologists and some geologists, they say there are watermarks next to this. The Sphinx is in a kind of dump, in a khadda type of thing, a pit. On the pit, these are watermarks, and they said this was when Egypt was having rainfall. I don't know when it was, but these people say they know that when it was at least 8,000 years ago. So Sphinx is much older than the pyramid. Nobody can actually deduce what a Sphinx is. In Greek mythology, Sphinx is a very cruel animal which eats everybody who can't answer his or her question. In the Egyptian mythology, it's a benevolent messenger of the god. Sphinx actually means, the word Sphinx means catch like this. You know, sphincter, which closes, that comes from the same root. So this guy was supposed to, this god, so to speak, was supposed to catch hold of people who didn't answer his questions. A very great headmaster that way, doesn't answer questions, crush them in the grip. That is Sphinx for you. And this is the pyramid. Now, this was the completed pyramid. But before completion, people do experimentation. So this is the great place where you can see these 3 small pyramids. This is our friend Giza. There is something I want to tell you. Giza's Khafre pyramid has this kind of cap. What this cap is, they are polished granite. Now, this polished granite was there across the entire pyramid structure. But you know, the people are like that. For 4,000 years, कौन छोड़ता है ऐसी चीजें? मेरे घर में एक टाइल लगानी है. I'll go and take out one from pyramid. कौन देखने वाला? बहुत है इधर तो. You know, the total there are 23 lakhs of stones. 23 lakhs, 2.3 million stones, each weighing 2.5 tons. The total weight of this is 48,000 tons or something like that. Very huge kind of structure. The estimated weight I had somewhere, but anyway, it is very, very heavy. Yeah, 4.8 million, 48.8 lakh tons is the weight of this Khafre pyramid. So this coverage is not available to all because people have taken it away. It's no more there. But all pyramids were supposed to given this glazy finish. This one didn't have. How they got the blocks, where they got the blocks from? In Aswan, there is a mine for this kind of stone. The granite mines are in Aswan. From Aswan, almost 600 kilometers on the Nile, they brought it. Fortunately, Nile flows from Aswan to Cairo and not the other way around. That's why they could bring it on the Nile, on the barges. And from barges, they will take this, they'll cut it, they will put it, each stone 2.5 tons. And 20 years this work was going on, all by human labors without wheels. God knows how they made it. And they fitted it so well that in the inner structure, you can't even insert a blade along in the joints, and there is no mortar, no tuna business. It's all completely fitted by geometry. That is the great work of pyramids. Now, the pyramid has a slope, you see. It was said that if you look along the slope, you will see pole star. The slope is like that. That is the latitude of Cairo. That is the latitude of Giza. But now you don't see the pole star because pyramid has not moved. Pole star has moved. Now think about it for a second. The Dhruva Tara, the pole star, that also moved, but not the Great Pyramid. The Earth rotates like this, and pole star is what is pointing from the top of the North Pole. It goes to a star, that is pole star. But Earth is not only rotating like a top, it rotates like this. So in this rotation, the pole star actually moves. 9,000 years before Christ, the pole star was somewhere here. 2,000 years before Christ, when the pyramids were built, pole star was at this star. This star is still there. Thankfully, it has not gone yet. It's in a constellation called Draco. This was the pole star then. Now we have come to 2000. Pole star is our friend Polaris, which is the current star. As we keep moving, we will go after more 7,000 years, and pole star will be the Abhijit Nakshatra, which is currently there. That is astronomy for you, and that's what at that time Egyptians didn't know this is going to happen, so they put it to the pole star. This is a cutaway view of the pyramid. This is just to show you. I mean, I'm not going to spend any time on this, but it's not only a block of stone. There is galleries inside. There are passages inside. There are secret passages. This is the king's chamber where the actual sarcophagus is there. There is no king inside. There is nothing inside. There is not a piece of small iron or gold or nothing. Everything is looted by the robbers. They found a small, about 2.5-inch statue in ivory, which is said the statue of Khufu or Khafre, the king who built a pyramid. That is all it remains of the great Khufu. The pyramid and this much image. That Khafre thing is kept in Cairo Museum. You can see that there. Now, when they were making the pyramid, how the pyramid came about, I'll quickly tell you. I'll give an example. Uh, on the grave, they will put some kind of monument, like a samadhi sthal. So there will put a flat slab and they will put some pillars below the slab. They will used to call it mastaba. It's something like this, 2 pillars and a slab. Somebody got the idea. The architect's name is Imhotep, which is the villain in the Mummy film. He was not a villain, he was a great architect. So he created a stepped pyramid. Instead of the slab, he put small steps and created a pyramid like this. This is the first step pyramid built by a king called Zoser at Saqqara. Then they started improving on this design, but something went wrong, and they created this bent pyramid. This is created by the pharaoh Sneferu in Dashur. This is 2,600 years before Christ. This pyramid they had made, but they couldn't sustain the earlier angle, so they had to go like this, and this is what they made. And finally, they made the pyramid of Khafre. Finally, they perfected the art. There are pyramids all across Egypt, but nothing as big as the Khafre's major pyramid. There are 2 more pyramids there, as you can see. One important thing, the pyramid weighs those 4.8 million tons. If you put the 4.8 million ton anywhere, it will sink by its own weight. There were no pile drivers then. In Mumbai also, when you see multi-story building being made, they have to drive piles to find a rocky foundation. Fortunately, Giza has a rock foundation. That's why they built the pyramids there. They knew that the kind of weight they are creating, it has to be sustained by the surface below. That's how the pyramid is made. Some superstitions about the Egyptians. Now we are moving into Egyptian social structure. They were very much interested in afterlife. They were more interested in afterlife than this life. That's why all the money was kept in, not the money kept for their heirs. The money was kept for their own use inside the pyramid or wherever they were hiding their bodies in. But they found this insect. It is called the dung beetle. In Marathi, it is called shenkida. This comes out of dung. It generates out of dung because the spores are or the larva and pupa are there and all that. They didn't know about that. They thought it is coming out of nowhere. That means it is God's gift. God knows what kind of things there. So this is called scarab in Egypt. So scarab, they actually emulated this in precious stone. This is from a stone called lapis lazuli, which was imported even then into Egypt from Afghanistan. Even now, lapis lazuli, the best lapis lazuli comes out of Afghanistan. They carved this out of that lapis lazuli. This was a charm, like a tawiz, because this is a, the dung beetle is also another interesting factor. It builds its own nest by using dung balls. So when it was carrying the dung ball, they thought he's carrying the sun. So it's Ra, sun, dung beetle holding like this, godly beetle. So they created this. Then they also gave us paper. I told you this is papyrus in the Nile Delta. There are a lot of the reeds. These reeds actually grow up to 9 to 10 feet. I had cut those reeds. I had taken the sample. It's a triangular kind of reed. You cut strips out of it, and you stick them together. You beat them with some hammer and all, and it turns into a paper. And the paper lasts forever. In Egypt, you will find lots and lots of people selling pictures of on papyrus. Most of the times it is not papyrus, it's a banana leaf. So you have to be very careful. If you want to buy those pictures, you're welcome to buy, but go to authenticated sellers who say this is actually the papyrus. Papyrus is still being made. It's nothing very rare. Felucca is the transport in, it was the transport. There were no motorboats, no nothing. So transport was only wind powered. Remember, in the river, when you go, you can go along the current of the river without any force. Free में जाते हो. What about coming back? Coming back, you use the sails, and you actually the when in the evening the wind turns inside, that's the time you use this sailboat, and using a tacking is a sailing term called tacking. You go in a zigzag fashion to come back. It takes a lot of effort to come back.
Nene sir, just
Yeah.
an
Yes.
interruption. So you mean to say that they had feluccas, though they never had wheels?
Yes, they had felucca.
Uh,
So felucca is nothing but a sailboat. There is no other
yeah.
mechanics involved.
So the boating was very much there.
Yeah, but most of the times the boating was along the current. All the cargo
Yeah,
was
fair
along
enough.
the current. Nothing to
Yeah,
go back. Go back, then they will
yeah.
go on horses or camels on the banks of the Nile. But this was
Okay, okay.
available. This was required because वो पत्थर कैसे आएगा? The tons,
Yeah, yeah.
20, 30 ton stone, how will it come unless there is
The
some force
entire
pushing
trade
it?
happened on the Nile. So
Exactly. So
yeah,
this
yeah.
felucca, you can do the felucca ride even now. They have those sailboats running. It's a
We
very
we
pleasant
we are
experience.
planning to do it at
Great.
least one ride in Cairo when we are there.
In
Last
fact,
time
if
I
you
had done
can
it,
find,
so
if you can find doing it down south, there will be less
Mhm.
crowded also. Cairo is very crowded. Even the
Yeah,
felucca ride is
but
crowded.
once you are on the cruise, I doubt whether we'll have
हाँ हाँ
find time
उसमें
to
time
do
नहीं
all that.
मिलेगा. That's
Yeah, yeah.
correct.
But
Yeah.
one thing, because of the lack of time, I'm kind of taking you a little ahead in
Yes,
time
yes, yes.
from whatever we have kind of come across.
Yeah.
I think can you kind of give us some insight about uh, I would not say very current Egypt, but
Yeah.
say Egypt in the AD
Yeah.
or
I will. I
BC
will.
AD,
In,
that transition, because there are when my in my last visit I had seen definitely the hanging church,
yeah.
a synagogue,
Correct.
and of course the mosque. So it's a kind of a confluence also to a certain extent.
Yeah. I'm coming
All
to
the
that.
religions.
Actually, there are only 3 slides saying
Yeah,
exactly what you say. One
yeah.
of the gifts of Egypt was this person, is called father of monotheism. His name was Akhenaten. He was a pharaoh. He rejected all the multitudes of gods, and he said only one God is there, which is the sun. Aten was the name of his god, which was the sun. Akhenaten means I am the chela of the sun, I am the son of the sun, blah blah blah. And he actually removed all those gods which I showed you. And he in fact disfigured many of them in the temples. So he is the father of a single god concept, which is called monotheism. It is said that in the Middle East region, he started it, a kind of theme of a single god, which the Jews picked up. So they made it a single god, which the the Christians picked up, which they made a single god, and which later on picked up by the Muslims. So single god, he is the originator of that. But before that, Egypt was a multicultural place. And even after Akhenaten, his son was Tutankhamen. He realized that Akhenaten was a useless person. He turned back the clock and he removed all the Akhenaten symbols. So Egypt again went into the multi-god concept at that time. But in the olden times and till the advent of Muslims, Egypt was a very secular place. The Copt were the Christians who came into Egypt. I'm coming to that in a quickly. And they were a secular place. It was a liberal place. That's why it was a rich place. Egypt was always a rich country because a lot of trade used to happen there. It was an empire, safety was there, trade was there, liberalism was there. The moment they went into one god and all kind of thing, they started getting poorer. The only way they could become richer was to loot other cultures. Their own production is zilch, nothing. So this is the Al Azhar Mosque in Cairo, one of the largest mosques. This is also the site of the Al Azhar University. It is one of the major Islamic university in the world. Most of the Islamic scholars, including our friend Maulana Azhar, I think comes from Al Azhar, graduates of Al Azhar. This is the mosque in Cairo. Then there is a Ben Ezra synagogue in Cairo, 882 AD. That's the time it was formed. This is the place they say where Moses was found. Moses' story is just like Krishna, that he was found in somebody else's places by everything. I don't want to go into that. But this is the place they found Moses by the side of the Nile. Nile was going close to the synagogue at that time. Now it has shifted a little bit. So they built a big synagogue like this when Jews were doing very well in Egypt. Jews were the traders, they made a lot of money. When the Arab-Israel conflict happened, Egypt unnecessarily went into the Arab side. Egyptian people have only 17% of the Arab DNA. They are not Arabs by any count. They don't like to be called Arab these days. They call themselves Egyptians. Anyway, this is the Ben Ezra. You will be seeing that. There are some scriptures in this which are very, very old. And we have gone to different libraries. That is Ben Ezra. And then there is a hanging church at Cairo. This was actually, there was a, when the Babylonians came and destroyed Cairo, destroyed the Egyptians. Egyptians were attacked later on by many other cultures. So they destroyed Cairo and they built their own fort there. In that fort, there was a Burj. Later on, that Burj was broken down by Romans and they re-erected another citadel there. They called it Babylon. On the Burj of Babylon, they created a church when the Romans turned Christian. This is the church called Hanging Church. It was on a Burj. That's why it is up on the in the air, and down below also you can walk. This is also a famous. So Cairo is a place where all the three religions were very happily living together. Very secular place. Now Cairo has become a very poor, very, very overpopulated place. That is a place where even the graveyards are not safe because people go and stay in the graveyards. So some people dead inside, some people living up outside. Maybe they are very close to where they want to go at the last stop. So that is the Cairo situation for you. It's very poor country. It is begging from everywhere. Aswan Dam has created to its poverty because Aswan Dam stopped all the silt from going further. The productivity as land has gone down. Their cotton is not good enough. Their grain is not there. Cairo, Egypt was the grain basket of Roman Empire. Now they actually requested grain from India because they were going to starve this time because Ukraine war was going on. So today's Egypt is very poor. The only thing they can export is their culture. So all their making money is on the investment made by these pharaohs for 4,000 years. They are showing that to you and they are collecting money. Nothing else they produce, nothing else they have except a lot of population they produce, but nothing else they produce. That is Egypt for you. But because it is a tourist destination, it is very safe. Because if the tourists are harmed, nobody will come, which happened during the Arab Spring. People didn't come, people literally starved. They realized their mistake, they came out of the spring business. Currently, it is ruled by military again. General Sisi is the ruler of Egypt. He is also going to be the guest of our Republic Day parade this 26th January. Narendra Modi has invited him to be the chief guest of the parade. He is the one who has kept the Muslim Brotherhood under check. He has crushed the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is the Islamic terrorist organization, extreme Islamist organization. He has finished them all. So currently he is ruling. Egypt is ruled by a dictator. Egypt is a poor country, but for tourists, it is a heaven. The kind of celebration of mankind they can show you, you cannot see it. I was very fortunate. I went first to Egypt, then I went to Greece, then I went to Turkey, then I went to Rome, see the Roman civilization then. So I was fortunate to do it in that kind of sequence. And this is how I saw Egypt. And this is how I want you to see Egypt. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Nene sir. Thank you very much. In the entire talk, I could figure out a couple of things. I think Nile is a river and a goddess river for Egyptians then,
Yeah.
and it's very similar to what to almost it must be the culture everywhere across where the rivers are kind of considered to be the goddess. Like definitely in India, we consider them to be the goddess.
I just thought in Marathi there is a very nice poem, Ai Thor Tuze Upakar. In Egypt, that will be Nile Thor Tuze Upakar.
Correct. So that is one. And the other takeaway, as far as the politics and everything, you said that
Yeah.
common man had to work hard and pay taxes. I think it remains same today.
That doesn't change. That doesn't change.
Yeah. So that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Even as far as the graffitis are concerned, people do it today, and
Yes,
they did it
that also
2,000 years
yeah,
back, I would say.
correct.
So kind of, and another thing, I think the quest of humans continues 5,000 years back and even today about afterlife and reincarnation.
Yes, yes.
So
No.
that
Egyptians never believed in reincarnation. If they
no,
had
no, but
believed, they would have
they
let go of the
slept.
body.
Yeah, no, no. They believe that they slept and they will wake up
Yeah,
sometime.
correct,
So,
correct.
so something related to afterlife and reincarnation, I would say, it
One,
kind of
one,
continued in a way.
one interesting feature: those Egyptians were very, very conservative in nature.
Hmm.
500 or 700 years they knew of wheels. Wheels were there in
Hmm.
Assyria, Sumeria, and all that. They knew about it, but they would never employ that. They will say, "This is foreign. हमको नहीं चाहिए." Only after
Oh,
800
okay.
years they started making chariots. Till then, chariots nahi the उनके पास. Very conservative because Nile is giving everything. Now why to change?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Very
yeah.
fatalistic attitude.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think it has been more than an hour, and I'm sure we had to rush through a lot of things.
That
And this
happened.
session for explaining history of Egypt for last 5,000 years or more, it would probably take a couple of days or maybe a couple of
Yes,
weeks
very
to get into detail of every aspect of it, which is not possible right now.
yeah.
I would say that let's open up for Q&A. So if
Yes.
you have anybody has a question to ask Mr. Nene, they can raise their hand and we can open up for a Q&A. Kiran, you can probably check on that and check whether anybody has any question. There was one question that
Yeah, I
so
saw that Uday's question. Is this the
correct.
Hanging Garden of Babylon?
Yeah.
No, Uday, this is the reason it is called Hanging Church is because it is built on the place called Babylon. Hanging gardens were there in Babylon, definitely. And when the Romans called the place Babylon, somebody used the pun and called this a hanging church. And also the church is actually hanging in a way that there is a passage under the nave. That's why it is called the hanging. But
Yeah.
this is not the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Nene.
It's a pleasure.
Nene sir, you can stop the screen sharing so that
Yeah,
if
I will do
anybody
that.
wants
I will do
to
that.
interact, they can interact directly with you.
Sure. Yeah.
So any questions from anyone? Yeah, Uday, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we have a event for the hot air balloon.
Okay. In Luxor.
So how does that go? Does it take through some of these ancient sites?
What it does actually, because Luxor is the most important and the most, what I will say, vivid site of Egyptian antiquity. So
Right.
Luxor and Karnak and the Valley of Kings and Queens and the Hatshepsut, all are there very close by. You
Right.
cannot have a bird's eye view unless you go up in the balloon.
Oh, is it
The
okay?
balloon gives a fantastic view of the entire place. And that also tells you the importance of Nile, because you will see Nile, you will see all this, and you will see only desert. That is
Oh,
it
it's
for you. But
okay.
it's beautiful. The balloon ride in the morning, the weather is very pleasant in Egypt. In the morning, it's
Right.
fabulous.
And probably the sunrise as well, isn't it? Because
Oh,
we are
yeah.
starting at 4:30 in the morning. So
And no clouds, so sunrise always seeable.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Anyone else as far as the question and answer session goes? I don't think.
Yeah, fair. I mean, it was
Anybody.
too much to cover
Yeah.
in such a short time. So I normally have
Absolutely.
multiple lectures on each of these subjects. One lecture is alone on the Rosetta Stone, but that's okay. I did one big 1.5 hours lecture on Arab Spring, the entire process of Arab Spring and how it was destined to fail. I knew it was going to fail. It did fail. Ultimately, the military again came back to Egypt, but hota rehta hai.
Anyway, so Nene sahab, thanks a lot for giving us some insight into the 5,000 years of history of Egypt. I'm sure this would be my second visit, but I'm 100% sure that now I would be looking at things very differently. I will have this in the background.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Mr. G. Ravinder has some questions.
Please.
Yeah, please go ahead. Open him. No? Like, let him ask directly.
Just to be unmuted, sir.
Okay. I've just wanted to share something with you. At least there's a print of an ancient, not ancient, sorry, probably about 60, 70 years old that I have hanging in my door, in my wall, which has English tourists climbing up the steps of a pyramid.
Okay.
And along with them, the Arabs also, who are actually helping some of these women up the pyramid. It's in black and white. It's almost like a crayon. Okay. What I'll do is just to give you an idea, what it particularly does is it gives you an idea of the size of each of the steps of the pyramid.
Yeah.
I'll try to take a a shot of it and send it to Radha or Milind or whoever, because I think it's very interesting. It gives you not only an impression of the size, but also to a certain extent, the attitude of the Western wealthy ladies with the servants. I'll do it. I didn't think of it before, but anyway, I'll do it. Okay.
In fact, when you saw the pyramid has the glazed tiles on the top, but now it is not glazed. So it's actually with lot of gaps. It's actually the stones, and between the stones you can climb. It's a very arduous climb. Earlier they used to have competitions of people to go up and come down, and timing and all that. But they stopped because some of the people fell and they were dead and they couldn't be buried in the pyramid. So it was not of any use to anybody. So they stopped that competition. Now it is illegal to even climb one step on the pyramid. Yes, and finding the door to the pyramid itself was a big task. Nobody knew how to enter. The door was up in the middle of the place. Actually, when you go to the pyramid, you will see it is up in the middle of the, when you go climb up, it is not down where the door should be. It has to be secret. So that was it.
Yeah, I think Uday again wants to ask any question.
I think continuation of that, there is a option for us to crawl through those tunnels to this one.
Yeah.
Is it very tough or is it doable?
No,
what's your advice?
It is certainly doable, and there is no risk in it, but it is arduous at the same time, depending on the age and fitness of the person. But it's not risky at all. And once you go inside, you come into the big chamber, then you are again back breathing very normally. So it's problem nahi hai.
It's a crawl. Thoda crawl karna padega.
Thoda sa crawl hai, because they had to put it in a very small compartment. Otherwise, the important thing to note when you go inside the pyramid, on the top of you there are thousands of tons of rock held by architects' design. If the design was wrong, but fortunately the design has sustained for 4,000 years, so it must be right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Perfect. Anyone else who would like to have any question around? No, I don't think so. So I think we can kind of come to the closure part of it. So thanks to, once again, thank you, Mr. Nene, for kind of giving us an insight into this ancient history of Egypt for last 5,000 years. And thanks to everyone for coming and attending this session also. I could see there were almost 18 or 19 participants, and they were kind of all the way throughout, they were there. So that shows that the things were quite interesting, and the session went off really well. Can I see Mr. Nene?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So once again, thank you. I said thank you very much. Thanks to everyone, and just for everybody's knowledge, this thing is recorded, so we can share it on the YouTube, and we can share the links so that those can be shared with any other kind of friends who could not attend the session today. It can be shared with those people, and it would be on our YouTube channel, so people can definitely go and visit and kind of listen to it once again if they wish to. There are many participants who are going to travel with us in the last week of December. So this is kind of an announcement for them. We would have a separate quick Zoom session just to talk about the trip and the details of the trip in terms of the timing and in terms of the currency, what we should expect, what networks, and all the FAQs. We will try to address all the FAQs during that session. So probably we'll have this session on next Saturday again. It would be a shorter session, maybe for 15-20 minutes or a little more, half an hour, but definitely not as long as today. So please try and come on that session. So thanks once again to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Nene, once again. Thank you very much.
As I mentioned earlier also, actually, I am thankful to Countryside Travel, Milind, Kiran, and his team, entire team, Namita and everybody, for giving me this opportunity. Because as I said, this actually took me down the memory lane, and I could relive my great experiences in Egypt. Let us see if we can do more of these sessions. And I know I had to omit a lots and lots of information for the lack of time. Maybe some other time we could do a series of such lectures just for fun.
I would definitely make it a point to give you a kind of a catch up with you again once I'm back.
Sure.
Probably with more questions, yeah, where you can answer them. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone. Have a great evening and have a great weekend. Yeah.